Today's Cabinet meeting. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting that the public can attend. I'm Ros Jones, Mayor of Doncaster, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's meeting. Before we commence proceedings, I would like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We are not expecting a fire practice today. If the alarm sounds, please leave the building and congregate the other side in front of Cass of the Water. This meeting will be recorded and published on the Council's website. By entering the Council chamber, you are accepting that you will be recorded and your images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If anyone intends to record today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting, and please ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent mode. Thank you. I will now commence the meeting. Item 1. Apologies for absence. I've not received any apologies for absence. Do we have any, please? No? Item 2, exclusion of the public and press. There are no items on the agenda where the public and press are to be excluded. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Item 3, public statements and questions. There are no public statements or questions. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Therefore, I would ask that you go and sign the relevant declaration forms and return to government services. Item 5, decision records from the meeting held on 17th of January 2024. These have been previously circulated and are for noting only. Agreed?
Agreed.
Item 6, corporate plan. I will introduce this item. This report sets out the Council's contribution to the Team Doncaster Borough strategy for the year from April 2024 to March 2025. We all know how heavily invested the Council is in this partnership strategy, and in 23-24 we continued to make significant contributions to all of its themes. For example, under the Tackling Climate Change theme, we've installed additional electric charging points and administered low-carbon grants to businesses. Within the skills priority, we've hosted the UK's first Remake Learning Festival, which engaged over 10,000 residents and have helped develop a new university technical college in the city centre. Delivery of the Stainford Town deal and continued to work to reopen our airport are examples of how we've supported our economic ambitions. And under Healthier and Happier Borough theme, we've launched and embedded Doncaster's all-age carers strategy and supported wellbeing hubs, delivering help for residents such as at food banks, warm banks, debt advice and the energy advice. We've embedded our localities working model across the borough in order to help make our communities safer, stronger, cleaner and greener, also delivering road safety advice in schools and helping over 225 Ukrainian refugees to settle in Doncaster following the war in their home country. We supported organisations to achieve child-friendly accreditation and provided school holiday activities to help nurture a child and family-friendly borough. And we've helped develop our transport connectivity with rail improvements at Hatfield and Stainford, invested in walking and cycling routes to improve active travel options. We continued to promote the borough and its cultural, sporting and heritage offer through a variety of events such as Delicious Doncaster and the DN Festival of Light, and have received a royal visit from His Royal Highness King Charles to mark our new city status. At this time of year, as well as celebrating our achievements, we also look forward to the next year and set out our ambitions and commitments in a new corporate plan. The 24-25 plan identifies 10 key corporate priorities that will represent our borough strategy contributions for this year. We've grouped the priorities into 3 themes. Our organisational priorities are cultivate a dynamic, diverse, informed and empowered workforce. Think local, act personally, and create a fairer, kinder, more inclusive city. The second theme covers people-focused priorities, which include improving outcomes in adult social care and our children's directorate, and co-delivering an impactful NHS partnership. We also have place-focused priorities. These include work to reopen the airport, delivery of our programme of major projects, and a range of activity to create safer, stronger, cleaner neighbourhoods. Finally, we have a general priority which encompasses all other activity that the Council will do to contribute to Team Doncaster's strategies linked to education and skills, health and well-being, culture, the economy, housing and environment, and sustainability. As is always the case, we are ambitious to deliver, but also practical, relating to the resources available to us, which is why the corporate plan is presented today alongside our budget for 24-25. I ask Cabinet to give its approval for the corporate plan to go forward to Council for final approval and adoption, that we can continue delivering improvements and positive impact for people, businesses and communities of Doncaster. I'll now ask Cabinet members to indicate by raising their hand if they wish to ask any questions in relation to this item. Rachel.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's just a comment. It's really good to see the progress set out about what we've been doing in the last year. It's clear that we're very honest about the challenges that we have, and that transparency is something that should be welcomed. And the fact that we have measures in there so we will know whether or not we've been successful. I support the corporate plan. Thank you.
I can't see any more hands raised, so I will read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet approves the Council's corporate plan for 24-25 prior to its final approval at full Council on the 26th of February 2024. Is that moved, colleagues?
Move it, Chair.
Seconded? Therefore, the recommendation is agreed. I now move on to item 7, which is Capital Strategy and Capital Budget 24-25 to 27-28, and I will introduce this item. This report sets out the capital strategy and capital budget for the next 4 years, 24-25 to 27-28. The Council continues to invest in the future of the borough despite the tough economic climate, with £506.6 million of capital investment planned over the next 4 years. This will continue to stimulate growth and prosperity, with £193.1 million of investment planned for 24-25. The Council is investing in projects to further improve core services such as education, housing, infrastructure, leisure and culture, as well as creating jobs, attracting investors and visitors to the borough. This includes 222.7 investment in the Council's social housing stock over the next 4 years, covering maintenance, adaptations and the new build programme. In addition, we are committed to the ongoing refurbishment of our leisure centres, and there is 14.4 funding to commence refurbishment work at the Dome that will bring in much needed investment, support the long-term service provision at this location, and in turn the viability of Doncaster Culture and Leisure Trust. Our South Yorkshire Airport City programme does not feature in the capital programme at this stage, but will once the procurement for an airport operator has been concluded and the final business case updated. I will now ask Cabinet members to indicate by raising their hand if they wish to ask any questions or make statements in relation to this item, please. Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a brief one, really. I mean, I think it's worth noting really that, particularly on economy and development, it's really positive to see certainly the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement from Exborough. We know that this area will benefit massively from this injection of cash and obviously funding. But more to that, I mean, obviously with the infrastructure changes of the entrance to the town, it's extremely positive for the town and obviously its residents as well. So I think we need to bear in mind that will have a real game-changing effect on that area, hopefully. And it's good to see that investment being pulled forward. So thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a comment really. Although the housing revenue account report later on the agenda covers some of the capital issues, I feel it's worthwhile mentioning that around some specifics on spend and works. Those mentioned in the report, there's £12.3 million to acquire new council homes over on the open market over the forthcoming year. That's building on what we've already acquired in this financial year. Also, we are planning to spend £27.8 million on home improvements and maintenance in the programme for 24-25, and also there's an additional £9.7 million to be spent on thermal and energy efficiencies. Also, other improvements in the pipeline are to Gypsy and Traveller residential sites, and we are still endeavouring, even though it's in difficult circumstances, to move forward on the council house build programme phase 2B and phase 3. So things are happening in housing within Doncaster, and we look forward to more homes coming our way and improved homes also. Thank you, Chair.
Phil?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to commend the report. I particularly welcome the ambition of the capital strategy. £193 million planned for the coming year alone. It's £500 million of investment over 4 years, and it shows how central the council is to the borough's economic fortunes and to its regeneration and its improved economic performance. I'd also want to say that although investment in the town centre is always more visible, if you build stuff near the station or the market, lots of people are going to see it. Actually, the investment, if you look throughout this report, the investment is distributed across all corners of the borough. And I think that's something that we shouldn't neglect to mention. It's really important. Doncaster is a place of places, and north, south, east, west are benefiting from this investment. But also what I would want to highlight is the revival of Doncaster's airport is a centrepiece for our economic fortunes. And I commend the council's plan, I commend the mayor's determination to get negotiations over the line and to get a successful airport back up and running in the borough. Thank you very much.
Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome the investment in flood prevention. Doncaster, over a number of years, has experienced a number of regular flooding incidents in the borough. Works have been identified to improve flood defences, to better protect homes, businesses and indeed properties in the areas of greatest need. Again, I welcome this investment in the report. Thank you.
I can't see any more hands raised, so I will read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet recommends that Council 1 approves the capital strategy at Appendix 3, 2 approves the capital programme for 24-25 to 27-28 at paragraphs 13 to 33, and 3 notes that directors, in consultation with portfolio holder, take responsibility for allocating the block budgets to specific schemes in the capital programme. The block budgets are identified in Appendix 1 and include the retained building programme, school condition programme and integrated transport block. Colleagues, is that moved?
Move it, Chair.
Is it seconded? Seconded. Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. I now move on to item 8, which is Treasury Management Strategy Statement 24-25 to 27-28. I will introduce this item. This report sets out the strategy for management of the Council's finances and provides a framework for the operation of the Treasury Management function within the Council. Treasury Management seeks to optimise the Council's cash flow and secure the most effective arrangements to support the long-term funding requirement. Key prudential indicators relating to borrowing limits are detailed in the report. There have been no significant changes to the report this year, and the key issue to take from the report is that we remain under-borrowed and continue to use our internal resources, reserves and balances to reduce the need to borrow whilst interest rates remain high. I will now ask Cabinet members to indicate by raising their hand if they wish to ask any question in relation to this item, please. Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo your comments, Mayor, and say I know that although this is a report that never attracts many questions from councillors, actually I know that you pay great attention to the detail of this report and the work that underpins it from our officers. Our council is incredibly responsibly well run, and not only are we under borrowed, but actually I think the management of our finances in the last year to minimise our external borrowing because of the rising interest rates has required an awful lot of work of staff. And so I commend the fact that you pay so much attention to this, but also the highly skilled staff that back us up and make sure that we are a very well-run local authority.
Thank you, Councillor Cole, and I endorse what's been said. We are all aware how hard it is for our staff in all different areas of the authority, delivering with fewer and fewer resources in order to deliver for our residents and businesses out there. Therefore, with no one else wanting, I will read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet recommends Council approves the Treasury Management Strategy Statement 24-25 to 27-28 report and the prudential indicators included, and the minimum revenue provision policy as set out in paragraphs 41 to 42 detailed in Appendix B. Is that moved, please?
Move it, Chair.
Is it seconded? And therefore the recommendations are agreed. I now move on to item 9, which is the revenue budget 24-25 to 26-27. I will introduce this item. This report sets out my revenue budget proposals for 24-25 to 26-27. Despite the significant financial challenges and ongoing uncertainty around government funding, the proposals set out a balanced budget whilst maintaining investment in the borough and protecting the most vulnerable in our communities. This council now has 25% less to spend on services in real terms than it did in 2010-11, which creates great challenges and represents £344 reduction per resident. This budget provides sufficient resource to enable frontline services to continue to deliver at their current service levels, despite increased service pressures and rising costs. There remains a great deal of uncertainty in relation to adults and children's social care costs and long-term funding for local authorities. We have yet again been provided with a single-year settlement, meaning yet again we do not have certainty over funding of vital public services in the medium term. And this really is no way to run a country. Across the country, we are seeing councils of all political control struggling due to lack of government funding, rising service delivery costs and increasing demand. A survey by the Local Government Association found that 20% of councils believed it is very or fairly likely that they would need to issue a Section 114 notice, effectively declaring themselves bankrupt. I want to reassure residents that, whilst we remain under significant pressure, City of Doncaster Council is in a stable financial position, and we do not envisage issuing a Section 114 notice in the foreseeable future. That being said, difficult decisions have been made to balance the budget and meet an overall recurrent budget gap of £17.2 million by 2027. In light of the pressures and future risks, a council tax increase of 2.99 is being proposed alongside a further 2% increase for adult social care. This would mean council tax would increase by 4.99 in total. The adult social care precept is specifically used to contribute towards adult social care funding pressures. Overall, this will increase Band B and A council tax by just over £1 per week and Band D by £1.50 per week. Doncaster will still continue to have the lowest council tax in South Yorkshire and one of the lowest overall in comparison to other councils of similar size in the country. Doncaster is in an incredibly well-managed council, which is why we are still able to deliver the services we do for one of the lowest council tax rates in the country. We are a caring council, which is why we are committed to protecting the most vulnerable. And whilst many councils have amended their local council tax reduction scheme, our policy continues to provide a much needed safety net for those who are most vulnerable on the lowest income, including pensioners, single parents, and those with complex needs or disabilities. With still no certainty from government about funding beyond the next year, it is hard to plan ahead. Thankfully, we are financially well managed, and I will do whatever I can to mitigate the impact of uncertainty. I remain firmly focused on supporting Doncaster's priorities outlined in the corporate plan and the 10-year borough strategy. Doncaster delivering together to create a safer, stronger, cleaner and greener Doncaster. I would like to thank Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee for their response to my draft budget proposals, which are fully considered and respond directly in due course, but they are supportive of the proposals. I will ask Cabinet members to indicate by raising their hand if they wish to ask any questions in relation to this item. Nigel, and then Laney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it makes it perfectly clear, basically, in the executive summary for this paper coming to Cabinet on item 2 that since 2010, councils have continued to face the position of reducing government funding, strong demand, increasing costs and volatility, and no reduction in statutory obligations to provide these services. This budget again seeks to maintain frontline services with less funding in real terms. Let's take this into context from where we're concerned, obviously, as a council. So back in 2010, we have seen year-on-year cuts in terms of funding as a local authority, amounting at this present time to 25%, as the Mayor's just made everybody aware. If you look at England in general, that's roughly the cuts it's roughly about 19%. So Doncaster's being hit harder than the rest of England where this is concerned. Again, Ross has made it perfectly clear that per resident, this is affecting people in terms of the spends we have by £344 per resident per year. But in terms of an household, that works at £751 per year in terms of spends. Now, whether we like it or not, unfortunately, because of the government's reluctance to actually fund our situation and our funding, certainly since 2010, we're in a position where we're having to sort of look at raising things like council tax to fund our services. So it's the government's continued vicious assault on the state of the public finances, not just in terms of councils, but it could be education services, it could be our NHS, that's causing these issues at a local level. And as the Mayor said, we've seen a number of councils go down. They've been obviously made bankrupt. They've gone into financial difficulty, purely and simply because of underfunding by central government. We just need to make it clear again that we are obviously aware that people are struggling across Doncaster, but we're all, as a city and as a borough, we are all going to need services throughout our lives. We're all going to want our kids looking after properly. We're going to want our bins emptying. We're going to want us grass cutting, as refuse taken away. And we're also going to want us mum and dads looking after as well if they need that care. So these services that we provide at a local authority, we have to pay for, whether we like it or not. So, you know, the council tax obviously sort of like has had to rise because of the lack of government funding, has a knock-on effect. So we know people are struggling. We haven't made this, and we won't be taking this decision lightly, but unfortunately we're in a situation where 14 years of continued Tory austerity have placed us in this position. So thank you, Chair.
Blaney.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to highlight, a bit of a positive news story within this that I think should be captured and talked about, despite the quite bleak picture in terms of local authorities' finances nationally. And that's the fact that, we are committing a significant amount of money for that universal youth provision, which we have done previously. And what we've had to do as a local authority is have them discussions around, is the holiday and food money from DFE enough? Well, it's not, because it excludes those that aren't on free school meals. It's never sure if we're going to get it the next year. There's lack of clarity on that. So I think it's really beneficial that as a council we've taken that decision politically to invest in that universal provision, because it means, like when we did that the last time, it means that we've got over 500 sessions being delivered over the summer holidays. So that weight on parents worrying about what their children and young people can and can't access, that's being lifted. It means that 29 areas, like what we did last time, had activities that were being provided, and up to 10,000 children and young people were actually attending these. So I just want to highlight, because when we have these discussions around youth services or youth activities, and as we talked about with 14 years of austerity, the reality is that was one of the first things that national government cut, and it's been cut by over 70% nationally. And the YMCA for young people have raised serious concerns in terms of impact on young people, in terms of mental health crisis that they face and exploitation. And the need for these activities are beyond playing a bit of football in a field. They're beyond doing some arts and crafts. It's about learning new skills, being with your peers and being in safe environments. And the government continues, through short-term settlements or through ill-thought-out ideas, continue to drip-feed pennies with lack of clarity, and that is beyond hindering the local authorities' capability to keep our young people safe and provided for. So I think it's just really beneficial, and I think we need to highlight that we continue to have that commitment for our families. Thank you.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to commend the budget. This budget actually acknowledges the very difficult times. We're in the difficult times that residents face, and the tough choices that we have to make to support residents, businesses, and to secure Doncaster's economic well-being. Our budget is set at a time when councils of all political colours are finding themselves technically bankrupt and are issuing Section 114 notices. There's a concern that up to 1 in 5 local councils may find themselves in that position over the next 18 months to 2 years. Fortunately, we will not be one of those councils because we are very well managed. But it illustrates that the government does not provide enough resources nationwide to make sure that local authorities can deliver effective public services that so many residents rely on. I commend the budget, I commend the forward planning that's done several years ahead, despite the fact that the government gives us their contribution. they announce it very late in the day. I think they announced it a few days before Christmas this year. And then we have to make sure that our financial planning is done in the few weeks that follow. They make it very difficult. They never give us a 3-year settlement to allow local authorities to plan ahead. So everyone is always working over scrambling to get their finances organised. The government really has nothing to say about improving the quality of public services delivered at the level that most people encounter public service, which is the local authorities that sort out their roads, their bins, their family support, their social services and so on. And yet the government keeps talking about tax cuts. Just a few days ago, the IMF, which monitors the economies of 190 different countries, it announced that it advised the UK government against further tax cuts. I'm not sure the government will listen. It also said that preserving public services and investment implied higher spending levels than was reflected in the government's current plans. And I think that demonstrates that even independent observers and experts see that the government are continually underfunding vital public services. I see no prospect of that changing without a change in government. But I commend our budget put together in incredibly difficult circumstances.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else indicating, and therefore I will read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet recommends that Council approves the 24-25 to 26-27 revenue budget as set out in this report. And this includes 1, the medium-term financial strategy, including all proposals in this report as set out in Appendix A. 2, a gross revenue expenditure budget of 636.5 million and a net revenue expenditure budget of 259.6 million as detailed in Appendix A. 3, council tax increase by 4.99 to 1,649.73p for a Band D property, £1,099.82p for a Band A property for 23/4. This includes 2.99 council tax increase, equating to an increase of 90p for a Band D per week, 46.98 per annum, 61p for Band A per week, 31.32 per annum. 2, 2% government adult social care precept, equating to an increase of 60p for Band D per week, 31.43 per annum, and 40p for Band A per week, £20.95 per annum. 4, the revenue budget proposals for 24-25 detailed at Appendix B, pressures 8.7 million and Appendix C and D savings of 10.9 million. 5, the 24-25 grant to third sector organisations outlined in paragraph 56 and Appendix F. 6, the fees and charges proposed for 24-25 outlined in paragraphs 50-52 at Appendix G. 7, note the Chief Financial Officer's positive assurance statements detailed in paragraphs 64 to 83. 8, delegates the acceptance and spend decision of any 24-25 Household Support Fund grant allocation to the Director of Corporate Resources in consultation to the Mayor. 9, delegates approval of a spending plan for the estimated 3.1 million to 3.7 million additional social care funding to the Director of Corporate Resources and the Assistant Director of Finance and Technology, that's the section 151, in consultation with the Mayor as detailed in paragraph 38 and 10, delegates the approval to change fees and charges in year as a result of increases or decreases in energy costs to the Chief Financial Officer in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder as detailed in paragraph 52. Colleagues, is that moved?
Move it, Chair.
Is it seconded? Seconded. Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. We now come to item 10, which is the Housing Revenue Account Budget. And for this, I will invite the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Glyn Jones, Cabinet Member for Housing and Business, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. This report sets out the housing revenue account as a balanced budget for 2024-25 and the medium-term financial forecast until 2027-28. The HRA budget includes a council house rent increase of 7.7%, in line with government's policy on rents for social housing, which equates to an average weekly rent increase of £6.30. The rent increase includes 6.7% for inflationary and service pressures, continuing to provide for our tenants, including provision for damp, mould and condensation and costs resulting from the introduction of the new consumer standards. The further 1% is to provide additional funding for around 26 additional properties in 24-25 to help alleviate some of the demand for social housing and support our efforts to tackle homelessness. We anticipate remaining the lowest council house rents in South Yorkshire and one of the lowest in the country at £88.16 per week. We have carefully considered this recommendation due to the current economic climate and with the understanding that 73% of tenants will see an increase in their housing benefit and universal credit payments to cover the impact of this change. Council house rents will continue to be significantly lower than those in the private sector. In Doncaster, we continue to have in the region of 8,000 people on the housing register. With this rent increase, we will continue to maintain the standards and services for our current properties and tenants and provide additional properties to help alleviate the demand for housing. For the first time, since the right to buy regulations were introduced in 1980, we are budgeting for an increase in properties in 2024-25. All of the fees and charges will be increased by the appropriate rate of inflation, and Cabinet are asked to note this report and recommend the HRA budget and rent increase proposals to Council for approval. Thank you, Mayor.
I now invite Cabinet members to ask questions or make any statements in relation to the housing revenue account. Colleagues. Joe.
Thank you, Chair. It's simply to emphasise the fact that even during these difficult times, we're continuing to acquire housing that will be used as social housing. It's a brilliant thing that we're doing. Section 106 is not delivering the affordable housing requirements that we need. The initiative that you've taken through St Leger Homes is hugely beneficial to this authority and the residents of this authority. So I commend the content of the report and applaud the concept behind it.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else indicating they wish to speak, and therefore I again will read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet notes the report and recommends to Council to approve the housing revenue account budget proposals as set out in this report, which are 1. Rents are increased from 1st of April 2024 by 7.7% as detailed in paragraphs 8 to 11 in line with government policy. This will result in an average weekly rent increase of £6.30, resulting in an average rent of approximately £8 to £8.16 per week. Rents will be charged every week of the year. 2. the budget proposals for the HRA for 24-25, which are contained in Appendix A. These proposals set out a balanced budget for the HRA and maintain a reserve of 3.5 million. 3. Fees and charges set out in paragraph 15. And 4. Delegates the approval to change district teaching charges in year as a result of increases or decreases in energy costs to the Chief Financial Officer in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder, detailed in paragraph 15. Colleagues, is that moved? Is it seconded? And therefore the recommendations are agreed. We now move on to item 11, which is Retail, Hospitality and Leisure Scheme for Business Rates 24-25. I will introduce this item. This report sets out the retail, hospitality and leisure relief discretionary relief schemes for business rates for 24-25. This awards qualifying businesses with a 75% relief up to a capital cash limit of £110,000 per business. The scheme was announced by government at the autumn statement on the 22nd of November 2023 and guidance was published on the 15th of December 2023. The government is not introducing new legislation for these reliefs. Instead, the council is expected to use its discretionary relief powers under section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act 1988 to grant the relief in line with the relevant eligibility criteria. The council will be compensated for the costs of granting the reliefs through a section 31 grant from government. An analysis of business rate records indicate that the schemes will benefit around 1,057 businesses to a total value of over 8.6 million at a time when they continue to try and cope with the cost of living crisis. The report sets out the full qualifying criteria of the schemes. I will now ask Cabinet to indicate by raising their hand if they wish to ask a question in relation to this item. Joe.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, it's a comment. You only have to walk round our town and our cities to see the difficulty that these industries are suffering at this point in time. They're really struggling. I commend the fact that that's been noticed, that financial provision has been made. I do, however, also note that it's being left to Doncaster Council in this particular interest to deliver it. May not be costing Doncaster Council in terms of the money itself, but in terms of staff involvement and everything else, there will be an impact on Doncaster Council. I welcome the funding. The businesses will welcome the relief. I think it is due, and I think they are entitled to it. But I think government should be responsible for these things, not local authorities having to do the work associated with them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And therefore, as no one else has indicated, I'll read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet approves the proposed retail, hospitality and leisure relief scheme at Appendix 1, which will potentially benefit around 1,057 local businesses with the relief totalling 8,614,105. Colleagues, is that moved?
Move it, Chair.
Is it seconded? All in agreement. Therefore, the recommendations are approved. We now move on to item 12, capital investment and service enhancement at Doncaster Dome and Thorn Leisure. I will invite Councillor Ball to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. The City of Doncaster has over the past 4 years undertaken a programme of significant capital investments to its leisure facility stock with an investment of over £80 million. As we continue to approach, we are proposing to use this approach to commit and commence refurbishing works at the Dome and across the city. As the report outlines, there is a significant investment of £14.4 million that will not only refurbish the lagoons and entrance areas, but add additional features to the much-loved building itself. The Dome was built in the late 1980s, opening in 1989, at the time being one of the largest leisure centres in Europe. Built as a cornerstone of the development of the 130-hectare regeneration site, which we now know as a lakeside. However, it hasn't gone unnoticed that the building needs investment to bring it back to its former glory and obviously to service future generations. Therefore, this investment will support the long-term viability and provision the Dome offers, as well as help underpin the viability of Doncaster Culture and Leisure Trust itself. The works will have particular focus on the lagoons, the main entrance and significant elements of the building fabric and mechanical and electrical systems. Due to the complexity and scale of works, the lagoons will be closed for 12 months and funding is being made available to cover the loss of revenue whilst these works actually take place. This report also asks the Cabinet to agree to accept a grant, and this grant funding is from Sport England of £1.2 million, to support the works at Thorn Leisure Centre, contributing to the refurbishment of the pool, the changing rooms, the entrance and redesign of the sports hall to create a 2-storey space. Additionally, providing on the ground floor a bowling alley, soft play, a flexible space, and on the first floor, a wellbeing studio, gym, and certainly changing rooms. This will extend the offer from leisure to a health and wellbeing offer for the people of Thorn and Moor Ends in that area. And finally, the report will seek approval for a report outlining the options and feasibility assessment in relation to the pool for Edlington. Sadly, our Levelling Up Fund bid for Don Valley was turned down by National Government. National Government stated back in November that there would be £100 million from the Levelling Up Fund set aside for culture, and we are hopeful that Edlington Pool will be eligible for this fund, but we currently are still awaiting details of this. I commit this report to the Cabinet and as it fully supports the health and well-being of Doncaster and its citizens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Does any Cabinet member? Yes, Sarah.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say it's great to see this investment and commitment to our leisure centres and towards our collective health and wellbeing in Doncaster. This is in the face of countless closures of leisure centres having to be closed across the country due to government's lack of support and investment in the face of volatility and rising costs and bills. It is clear that we've made it a priority here in Doncaster. The long-term data on the value and benefits of swimming, alongside other physical activities, on the long-term health of people, as reported by Swim for All, says that investing into swimming equals a surprising reduction in NHS need and massive good health outcomes like reducing cardiovascular issues and mobility issues. This is why Edlington deserves and needs the support from the government to help fund the refurb for Edlington Community and Wellbeing Asset Leisure Centre. And it's disappointing to not see this already being done by the Levelling Up funding. And I hope that the government will read this report and see the fantastic work and commitment that we have, and will support this going forward and help us to continue to invest in Doncaster residents' health and wellbeing. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else indicating, so I will now read out the recommendations within the report. And that is that Cabinet, 1, agree capital investment of £14,427,000 and revenue support of £1.1 million to enable refurbishment and enhancement works to take place that will return the Dome to a high quality leisure offer, and at the same time support City of Doncaster Council's ambitions to reduce the service underwriting support moving forward from 2025. Works to include lagoon refurbishment and enhancement, including all ancillary areas, entrance refurbishment, building fabric improvements, mechanical and electrical system replacement. 2. Agree the implementation of the scheme subject to approval of the capital programme at full council on the 26th of February 2024. 3. Allocate 1.1 million from the Service Transformation Fund to provide revenue support whilst the lagoons are closed. 4. Delegate to the Chief Exec and Chief Financial Officer of 1.21 grant funding from Sports England to enable Phase 2 of Thorn Leisure Centre to be completed as intended, with works including install of a mezzanine floor, bowling alley, soft play facilities and 2 wellbeing studios. 55 station gym and flexible bumping space for local services to use. And 5, agree to receive further reports in relation to the investment requirements for leisure facilities and the options appraisal in relation to Edlington Pool. Colleagues, is that moved?
Move it, Chair.
Is it seconded? Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. That now concludes the items of business on the agenda today. I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and input, and I will now close the meeting. Thank you.